Hey everyone, welcome back. We know you're all about leveling up, getting that extra edge, but without the overwhelm. And that's what we're diving into today.
Right on.
Resilience.
Mm-hmm.
We've been combing through a ton of stuff from LinkedIn, posts, this super insightful newsletter, even some really interesting poll data. And it's painting a pretty clear picture. Resilience is like the not-so-secret weapon of, millionaires.
It is. It's that edge. It really is that thing that entrepreneurs who make it to the top, they seem to they get it.
They have it.
They have it, yeah. And I think what's so interesting about looking at these specific sources is it's not just some guru on a stage telling you how to do it. It's from, the people who are in it, in the trenches. So I think there's a lot of real valuable insight to be pulled from this particular deep dive.
Absolutely. And that's exactly our mission today. To really break down what resilience means, especially in this context of, reaching for those big goals, financial and otherwise. Mm-hmm. And most importantly, to give you some actual steps you can take right now to start building that resilience muscle.
Mm.
So let's just jump right in. Let's start by defining what we actually mean by resilience.
Sure.
When we're talking about resilience, what are we talking about?
So it's more than just bouncing back. It's more than just getting back to where you were after a setback. I think what we're seeing here is that resilience is really about how you rebound. Do you just get back up to where you were before, or do you come back, stronger,
right,
smarter, having actually learned something from that experience? It's that ability to kind of turn those obstacles into opportunities for growth. And that's the real standout pattern we're seeing, especially when we're looking at those individuals who achieve that sort of mega success. It's they're not just avoiding failure, they're almost leveraging it.
Yeah, they're using it. It's interesting. And I think it's really important to highlight that because, the road to success is never straight. Right. There's always going to be those detours, those roadblocks.
Always.
And I think one of the really interesting angles that our source material brought up is the idea of these negative syndromes.
Yeah.
That can actually chip away at our resilience.
Right.
So tell me a little bit more about those.
So these are kind of like these mental patterns that are almost acting as these invisible anchors weighing us down. And there's a few that were highlighted by, a mindful educator, meditation teacher, and Buddhist priest who shared their perspective. And one of the first ones that was brought up was imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
So I think a lot of people, especially people who are high achievers, experience this, that feeling I'm a fraud, I don't really deserve this.
It's not really that good.
Yeah, they're going to figure me out. Even though there's evidence that you're not, it's that feeling of I'm not worthy. The second one was scarcity mindset. And this is that, that belief that there's only so much to go around, whether it's money, opportunity, even time.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, I think, leads to a lot of anxiety and a lot of risk aversion.
Yeah.
So just those two alone, those are huge.
I mean, those two are incredibly draining. I can only imagine how exhausting they can be.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the others that were highlighted?
So we also had money guilt syndrome.
Okay.
And this is, I think it's something that some individuals experience as they start accumulating wealth, especially when, they're kind of aware of the struggles that other people are going through, which I think makes perfect sense, but it can become this weight on your shoulders. Mm-hmm. And then finally, burnout syndrome, which I think is something that, almost anyone who's ever really tried to achieve something big has probably felt at some point. That sense of, emotional, physical, mental exhaustion just from pushing yourself too hard for too long.
Yeah. These are those mental traps that keep us from overcoming those challenges.
Exactly.
So if those are the roadblocks, how do we start clearing them out?
Right.
And, our sources suggest that the first step is mindfulness. Mm-hmm. So tell me about that.
Yeah. This was a really important insight. Resilience isn't something that you can just sort of switch on.
Right.
It's something that you have to cultivate. It starts with that real self-awareness,
mm-hmm.
being present with, your thoughts, your feelings, and not judging yourself, really being honest with yourself. That's the foundation.
Okay. So we know about these internal obstacles.
Right.
We know that mindfulness is that starting point. But how do we actually practice mindfulness in a way that helps build that resilience? Because our material outlines a 3-step process.
Yeah. It gives us a great framework to work with.
So let's break that down.
Okay. So the first step is awareness. Really being able to pause and recognize, okay, what am I feeling right now? Really identifying the specific emotion. So, for example, Instead of just feeling frustrated, you might be able to say, okay, I'm actually feeling anxious about this deadline.
So it's about getting specific with the emotion, not just, oh, I feel bad.
Exactly, yeah. The more accurately you can name that emotion, the better you can understand, what's triggering it and how it's affecting you. So that's step one. Step two is acceptance. And now this doesn't mean you have to like the situation or just kind of resign yourself to something negative. It's about, acknowledging the reality without fighting it. And what was emphasized in the material was that this can actually be surprisingly very empowering because you're not wasting energy, like resisting what is.
Right.
So it's not about saying, this is great if it's not, but this is what's happening right now. Okay.
And I acknowledge it. I accept that.
Exactly. And then step three, the final step, is action. So once you have that awareness, you've accepted the situation, then you can commit to taking those actions that align with your values and your goals. And now that action is coming from, a place of clarity, of purpose, rather than, just reactive emotion.
So it's a very intentional way of responding as opposed to reacting.
Yes.
I like that. And I think that another point that the material brought up that I think is really important to highlight is this, the 100% commitment, the millionaire commitment path.
Right.
So what does that kind of dedication look like, especially when we're talking about building resilience?
It was interesting. The material was saying, you need that initial passion, that excitement, but it's that commitment that carries you through those inevitable setbacks.
Right.
It's that unwavering dedication to keep moving forward, even when, that motivation fades and those challenges pop up. It's about, keeping your eye on that bigger picture. Realizing that, success is usually not a sprint. It's a marathon. And you have to have that consistent drive.
Yeah. The passion can come and go, but the commitment is that engine.
Exactly.
So besides those three steps, that awareness, acceptance, action, and that unwavering commitment, what other things do our sources say can help us build resilience?
Sure. So there were a few supporting elements that we saw. Gratitude, that was a big one. Really focusing on the positive, even when things are tough. Good habits. Having those good habits in place, it gives you that stable foundation. You're not using up all your mental energy, just trying to make decisions all day long, which can make it a lot easier to navigate challenges when they come up.
Yeah.
And then a strong network.
Right.
Really, nurturing relationships with people who support you, who encourage you, that can make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
And then there was that, I thought this was really cool, the river philosophy.
Oh, yeah.
So have you ever thought about, how adaptable and persistent a river is?
That's a great analogy.
Right. It's always flowing. It comes across a rock. It goes around. There's a drought. It goes under. The terrain changes. It adapts. It doesn't get stuck. It just keeps moving. And I think that's a great metaphor for how we should approach, all those challenges that come up in life.
Yeah. It's a really good reminder that, those setbacks, they don't have to be the end. They're just part of that natural flow of progress.
Exactly.
Now, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about probably one of the biggest things holding people back when it comes to resilience, and that is fear. Because, the poll analysis from LinkedIn that we looked at really pointed to fear as that number one obstacle.
Yeah, and I thought this was really striking too, because it was clear from that data, fear is the main thing people are saying is holding them back, not just from resilience, but from achieving their financial goals as well. And what's even more interesting is that, fear isn't always this big, scary, obvious thing.
Yeah. It can be so sneaky.
It can be sneaky.
Yeah. And the material talked about it being disguised as things like, hesitation, procrastination, all the excuses we make, even, playing it safe.
Absolutely.
Fear is a master of disguise.
It really is. And the analysis broke it down even further. They identified these specific fears that people were talking about. So the most common one, and I think a lot of people will relate to this, is the fear of losing comfort.
Oh, yeah.
Even if you're not happy where you are, change is scary. Stepping outside of that comfort zone, that routine, that's tough.
Right.
Another big one was self-doubt.
Yeah.
That lack of belief in yourself and your abilities, which, often just paralyzes people before they even start. And then, the fear of public failure, that worry about being judged, being criticized if things don't go perfectly. And then this one I thought was really interesting, guilt about wealth. And it seems like, this often comes from a deeper place, like uncertainty, self-doubt. It's not just about the money itself. It's more about, am I worthy of this?
Yeah.
So it's interesting how those are all kind of